Hello, everybody. Today I am giving answers to questions that artists are afraid to ask. Welcome to ArtProf. This is our global art party. Get your questions into the chat. Things that you've always wanted to ask, but maybe felt were a little bit sticky to ask, that you can ask me. I'll do the best I can. I can't say that I will answer every single question necessarily, but I do think that transparency between artists is really helpful to have, especially if you're somebody who's just getting started. One thing that Deep D mentioned to me is that there are a lot of people in animation who are now being more open about what the pay is in a lot of the animation industry. And I know for people who are just getting started and maybe you don't know anything about what's a reasonable rate to be paid or what's a amount that is far too low, that's been incredibly important. I think oftentimes numbers and prices, those types of things, artists can be pretty opaque about that. I'm not saying that anybody should reveal any information that they don't want to reveal. Obviously, it's up to them. But pricing is something that a lot of people are very uncomfortable with, myself included. I've never really gotten used to putting a number on my artwork before, even though I've done it many times. So we're going to tackle those questions today, the questions that you've been a little bit hesitant to ask, because I am happy to give you guys everything because I'm old. I'm not going to hold back unless it's something really deeply personal, but I'm here to answer those questions for all of you. Neil is asking, will you do a stream demoing solvent-free oil painting? It is on the books right now. I haven't put it out on the website or anything like that, but yes, solvent-free oil painting is something that I have never done before because I always studied oil painting within the context of a school setting where I had facilities and I was able to get all of the studio support that I needed. But I understand that most people here probably have never had the chance to do that. Tell me in the comments, how many of you guys here, when you're making your work, are you doing it at home? I would guess that the vast majority of people, that is absolutely the case, because I've been doing this a long time. I still have a home studio. I used to go to open studios in Boston. They'd have it in multiple neighborhoods, and it was really fun to go and see all the work. But I'd go to these studio spaces that were bigger than my apartment. I mean, granted, my apartment in Boston was not so big, but I was looking at these studio spaces thinking, how do you guys afford this? Like, I would never be able to afford such a gigantic studio, much less one that's like downtown Boston. So yes, I've always had a home studio. Maybe someday I'll have a big schmancy one, but for now, this is all I have. How old are you? I am 48. In fact, my kid said to me the other day, you're 48. You might as well just be 50. I was like, thanks. I don't have problems with revealing my age, but it's those Asian genes. We tend to not age as quickly, I would say. 7A says pricing is so hard. I've seen so many approaches like pricing per hour or per square inch. Neither feels like the right fit, though. I agree with that. What I usually tell people is, listen, just think about what rate would you like to be paid? And it depends on the situation. Some people say, I don't care. I'm doing this for fun. I'll take $20 an hour. Other people might measure it against something else. For example, we do lots of portfolio critiques and artist calls. I do some consulting here or there, and I always measure the price of the artwork against the time I would charge for that type of thing, because I want to make sure that the money I'm making is sort of comparable. Like, I wouldn't want to do lectures for $100 an hour and then charge $15 for 1 hour of artwork, because for me, at least, it's all my time. That's not going to work for everybody necessarily. Depends on if you are doing professional work like that, but that is a big difference. For some people, it makes sense to consider that. Yes. Does everybody see the skeleton? I don't know if you can tell, but if you look at the bottom, that's the part that my husband fixed for me, because it was on this really bad plastic stand that everything just fell off. And so my spouse, Alex, he did some welding. And if you guys look at some of our recent shorts, you will see him in there. Although he's not as excited about explaining things. That's just, he's like focused on his thing. And so I come in and bother him. It's usually something that he doesn't want to be bothered with. I'm like, too bad. Neil says, I wonder why there's a stigma with sharing salaries. It seems weird to me. Actually, it sort of depends on the culture, because here in the US, you're not supposed to ask what people's salaries are. But I feel like I had a friend from Korea, and I could be wrong. I could be remembering this incorrectly, so apologies if this is not totally accurate. But he said that people ask each other all the time about what their salaries are. Like, it's no problem. So it depends on the place. But that's the type of thing that I probably wouldn't expect people to share. I can tell all of you here, in terms of keeping ArtProf afloat, that we're not raking in the millions. It's more like, okay, really treading water and my head is barely above. We're really just trying to stay alive. The millions of dollars, they have yet to kick in. So yes, not happening anytime soon. Lori has a recommendation. Irish Spring soap bars clean brushes from oils very well while the paint is wet. Also gets wet paint out of clothes. Oh, that's a great tip. Somebody sent me something, I can't remember the name, but it was like vegetable soap. And I'm going to try that. And by the way, everybody, I have not made this announcement yet. And it's on my list for today. Of course, I totally did not do that. But if you would like to help support some upcoming draw-alongs, it would be incredibly helpful to me if you guys would help me out by getting stuff off my Amazon wish list. So the link for that is in the YouTube video description below. And that's where you can send me art supplies so that I can do them on a live stream. Because I think you guys all know how expensive these supplies can get. And so anything you guys can get for me, there's a huge list that's been updated. You guys can take a look at that in the description. Let me put that in here for all of you right now. I should have done this today. That's why I'm doing it right now. How should we write this? Send Prof Lieu art supplies for upcoming art-alongs. There, that's what happens when you don't get your work done during the day. Good point from 7A. Home studio means pajamas. Tolly has an area with a table next to the kitchen. Yeah, a lot of people tell me that they have kitchen studios. My kitchen is not that big, so there's no way I could do that. But I'm actually curious, who here has worked on artwork within the vicinity of your kitchen? For me, I'm all about the coffee table in the living room. That's my coziest place to be. Neil says it's my bedroom. I do want to have a separate room just for art stuff. Me too, Neil, because I would like to have more places for certain things in my home, but not going to happen again anytime soon. Karasu says, I took a drawing class at my local community college. I got a C, which I don't know if I'm proud of or not. I constantly compared myself to the others in the class. Oh, you wouldn't be human if you didn't do that, Karasu. It's really hard because you show up to class and you all are probably doing the same assignment. You can't help but just look at everybody's work. That is oftentimes the case. I would try to think about what can you learn from the other students' work, because that is in general the best thing about art school, as long as it's not, as you say, really distracting, because we professors, we can tell you all kinds of things, but when I was a student and I saw other people's projects, I frequently looked at them and went, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? And part of me could say, oh, I'm not good because I didn't think of that. But instead, the way I think about it is rather, oh, that's something I now know about that I didn't know about before because I got to see that person's artwork. So if you can try to just frame it as an opportunity to learn from that person, because to me, that's a huge part about learning in a group. I mean, right now, we are doing quite a few workshops. And some of you guys know that we are doing registration for a lot of these workshops. It is due next Friday. And one of the comments that I always get about the workshop experiences is how much people really enjoy seeing what other people in the workshop are doing. And you know something? I feel sort of selfish saying this, but it's actually for me almost like having my own research team, because we are doing the oil pastel and oil sticks workshop tomorrow. And there's so many types of oil pastels. And I think out of all the types of supplies out there, the range of oil pastels that are available, depending on the brand, some of them almost feel like entirely different materials. And so what's been fun is that in the workshop channel, everybody's been sharing photos of all the brands that they're using, particular colors that they like. And it's been really helpful because, you know, something I never would have thought to have considered the Magno oil pastels. I really have only used Caran d'Ache, Sennelier, and Holbein. The other ones I've never really used before. And so now everybody's telling me about this. And actually, that is on my list. If you guys want to send me some Magno oil pastels, I can certainly do a draw along on that. Yeah, so if you can contribute by sending me stuff off my wish list, that will make it possible for me to do more art alongs, because I know a lot of people are curious about certain supplies, but maybe you don't want to buy it. And so you can let me be your guinea pig. We also have, oh, here's a follow-up from Karasu. My professor also said I don't have what it takes for illustration because my biggest strength was my imagination-based drawing and not observational drawing. Is this true? Not at all. I think that's such a frustrating, sweeping generalization about a person. A lot of the times I suspect why professors say stuff like that is because they're not seeing you the way I think that they should. Oh, Buddy wants to get out of the room. Buddy, say hello to everybody. There he is. He usually likes to sleep on my floor, but he gets anxious if nobody's downstairs. Let's see how he can last. We'll see. Maybe not very long. Okay, not very long. Okay. I'll be right back, you guys. Let me just let him out, and then we'll get back to the discussion. Getting back to your question, Karasu, I also find statements like that, number one, not helpful and really frustrating. I don't have what it takes for illustrate. Like, what does that mean? It'd be better for the professor to say, listen, I think you need to work on your compositional skills, or for them to say, okay, this is your strength. Here's a way to hone that even more. And if he thinks that you're not good at observational drawing, what he should do instead is tell you, here are the things that you need to work on for observational drawing. So I've never cared for comments like that because I just find them feeling like they're dismissive of the student, which I think is problematic from a teaching point of view. Z says, I paint on my carpet floor in my room. Kat says, in my bedroom, I don't mix art supplies and food. And Karasu says, dining room. Katz has a system. I spread newspaper on the floor and use a little folding table. Well, here's my little folding table because I can't be bothered to get a decent desk. That's all I'm going to do. So remember, everybody, today I am giving you answers to questions that artists are afraid to ask, because I really think, it's hard enough being an artist. I'm just talking about the making part, but then the whole other world of everything else, social media and jobs and professional development and stuff like that. I think artists can use all the help that they could possibly need. I see my role as being one of the few people who is willing to talk to people about that, because there's a lot of artists. There's almost this herd of mystique that they like to maintain, and that's okay. I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that, but I do think when we can share with each other our experiences, it really helps everybody else quite a bit. Tolly's asking, if you're passionate about a personal project, how do you overcome feelings of being annoying and shouting in the void? I had a college art project, worked on a kitchen table. When you say being annoying and shouting in the void, are you talking about a particular context like social media, or are you talking about having a website or something like that? Because this is my approach. I just shamelessly shout into the void. And I did that for years and years, and nobody watched us. You know why? Because our videos were terrible. But shouting into the void is the only way you'll ever achieve an audience for the type of work that you want to do. And I understand a lot of people are nervous about it. Of course you are. But you know something? It's the type of thing you got to just start it now. Because we could talk all day about, well, I need to get this first. I have to be better at doing this. Just put it out there. Because I learn the most when I put stuff out there. And frequently as a staff, we look at the videos and we say, well, why did that one bomb? Why was this one so well received? And so actually a big part of putting your stuff out there is getting almost research data for understanding and how to tailor things. Because when we started on YouTube, I had no idea what I was doing. And we just tried a bunch of things. Most of it bombed. But here or there, bit by bit over the years, we started getting some stuff that wasn't a bomb. And eventually it starts to build into something, because that's the type of thing you have to start that early. Nobody grows a following overnight. Even going viral doesn't get you a following, because people watch the viral video and then they don't watch anymore. It's the people that are loyal followers. They're the ones who you really want to be pursuing from the get-go. George says, many years ago, the computer center accidentally put out a printout of all the salaries in the regional office. Our section chief saw us look after checking their boss's pay. Yikes. I bet that was a pretty fun moment for all of you, maybe not for your bosses. George says he made us return the printout, but not before he checked what a few people read. I mean, it's that. How can you not look at that? Even the nicest person with the best of intentions is going to take a look at something like that. Well, cool, John. Did a 5-minute sketch. You can share that in the Discord with us later. And by the way, everybody, if you're not in the Discord, you should hang out there. You know why? Because previously I was doing typed critiques, but now I have started doing voice critiques. So I will see something posted in a critique channel and I will record a voice recording. And then I copy paste the transcript and I post the transcript with the voice recording. I wasn't doing that before. In my opinion, number one, is faster for me. I was doing voice command anyway, so I was like, why not? But I also think it's a huge difference to hear a critique from a voice compared to just typing. I mean, the typing is really nice too, because then people can reread it and other people can read it and stuff like that. But I hope for those of you in the Discord that's been helpful. Or sometimes somebody will ask something in the Discord and it's just a really big question. It's really hard for me to just type out everything. So I've been doing those voice recordings, and that has been really exciting for me because for some reason it feels like less work to do that, even though the critiques I leave are now twice as long as they were when I was just typing. But hopefully that is to everybody here their benefit. Ella says, how can I think of ideas for an art school application portfolio? I don't know if you've done any prompts, Ella, but we have a gigantic list of prompts on our website. So you just want to go to artprof.org. And if you type into the search bar, list of prompts, that page will pull up. And it basically pulls pages from all across our website that are potential prompts. Some of them are very structured. Some of them are really loose, but I find that sometimes a prompt can be a really great way to get started. And if you end up doing something else along the way, that's great. For example, one of my favorite prompts that we have on the site is to do an obituary portrait. So you go to the newspaper obituary, you search and you find somebody who you would like to do a portrait of. And it's not a physical description of what they look like, but the portrait has to involve imagery that tells you who that person is. Because, okay, confession, scandalous opinion, everybody, but I'm not a fan of those challenges that you see online where it's one word a day for a month. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And if those work for you, great. But I think one of the things that's missing from that experience is getting people to dig deeper for a prompt, because a lot of the challenges are structured so you just have one word for that one day, which means you can't go that deep when you only have a word for a day. And I know they're really popular. They're super fun for people to do. A lot of people benefit from it quite a bit. But in the context of an art school portfolio where they're looking for something that really does demonstrate more thoughtfulness and time and brainstorming from your idea, they're not a good model. And so unfortunately for a lot of people, their idea of a prompt is one of those online challenges. So take a look, Ella, because I know that is something a lot of people get concerned about, is they have to make this application and you're not really sure what to make. We also have Anali just finished my first semester of art school. Congratulations. Tell me in the chat, everybody, what's your big accomplishment for this week? I would say my big accomplishment is that I didn't eat chocolate peanuts all the time. I really like trying to cut back. Like the chocolate peanut thing is out of control for me. I didn't eat any this week. I'm really, really proud of myself. So tell me, what is your win? Did you finish a semester of art school, or did you not eat all the chocolate peanuts that you should not be eating all the time? I don't know how long it's going to last, but I was very proud that I went a whole week doing that. Quiet Zone says, we bought a house that had the entire low level for my art studio. I have a great and supportive husband. That's fantastic. I can tell you, based on my skeleton stand issues, before you pick your partner, you should make sure they know how to weld. That's now a requirement for any life partner that you choose, because you don't know, maybe you have a skeleton and it breaks and you don't know how to get stand me. Esther says, I am a pastelist as well as a ceramicist, but the clay has become all-consuming and I've hardly painted in many months. Should I feel guilty about this? Nope. The thing about having multiple interests is that you can't always just be 50-50 and always maintaining both at the same level. I do find sometimes when I'm on a roll with something, I don't want to do anything else. So tell me in the comments, for those of you who have done multiple things, has that ever happened to you where all of a sudden you can't get enough of acrylic inks and you know, oh man, I should be honing my other skills, but you're just like, oh, that's all I want to do all day, because that happens to me. I don't work consistently. A lot of people have told me, especially in the Discord, that they feel guilty that they don't work consistently. I'm like, I can't. My life is too chaotic, and my life is really not that chaotic. But creatively, I'm sort of a mess, and I don't do well when I'm like, okay, I have to be consistently supporting things. Yeah, no guilt, Esther, whatsoever. Okay, so this is a follow-up to Tally's question about shouting in the void and wondering if that's annoying. Particularly on social media, really on the ArtProf Discord and on YouTube, that I don't want to be annoying to anyone that is not interested in my work being misinterpreted. The difference is that, okay, in the Discord space, that is very different than, say, your personal Instagram, because the Discord that we have, and you should all be in there, by the way, just another moment of guilt. You can feel guilty about that, everybody. You can feel guilty about not being in the ArtProf Discord because it's so much fun, and I'm in there pretty much all day. To get back to the point, the Discord, that's a community place. We have guidelines in place. We expect people to be respectful and encouraging. And so we don't want people shouting like crazy. We do have a channel called Self-Promotion. So that is a place you can share your stuff, but we do have limits because we don't want people posting 50 things a day, okay? That's very different. Now, on your personal Instagram, do it all you want. And I've talked to people who say, well, isn't that too much posting? My thinking is that the algorithms are so all over the place that if you do a big dump of information, people usually are not seeing it consecutively because the algorithms throw things in all different directions. So actually, let's do a poll here for everybody. When you're looking at social media, do you get annoyed when you see something from somebody? And what is the thing that annoys you? Is it the frequency? Is it the type of post? Because I think posts are more okay when people feel like they're getting something out of it. For example, I've noticed that a lot of our videos that do well are when people feel like they're learning something very concrete. For example, I did that video the other day about Rembrandt's drawings. And a lot of people said in the comments, well, I never occurred to me to look at his drawings. And so now here's another thing that I want to do a deep dive on. But the other thing, too, is that anybody who's annoyed by you putting out your content, that's probably somebody you don't want anyway. You want people who are genuinely engaged. And so it's actually not a bad thing if people get annoyed and then drop off. You don't want those people anyway. So just do it. Shamelessly. That's what I do. I'm like, I don't care. If somebody's annoyed, too bad. So Artemis has a good suggestion. Make Twitch art live streams, and you can talk all you want about your work and ban people you don't like. Exactly. I mean, like, this is my space. This is my YouTube channel with the other staff. You're all here listening to me blather on. And if you don't like it or you're annoyed by it, you can leave. I wouldn't worry about it. Jamil says, I'm thinking of applying to Skowhegan to be in residence there. Do you think it's worth it? What are the pros and cons? I don't know a huge amount about Skowhegan. I know people who've been there and I've heard about the program, but I don't have a lot of details about it. But the thing about those residencies is if you get it, you should go. I mean, residencies are very competitive. So in my mind, I can't see why, if anybody got accepted to Skowhegan, why they wouldn't go. Because any opportunity that you have to meet another group of creative people, to make work in a different place, how is that ever not a great thing? And the thing about these residencies is that they do somewhat depend on fit. You should research the residencies and make sure it's something you want to do. However, they're amazing. They're so much fun. I haven't really done a really bona fide residency like Lauren has done several, and she's been doing incredible work there. So I'd say go for it. Emmett finished a 20-hour drawing. Yes, fantastic. Quiet Zone says, my dream is to have a piece of work shown in a non-pay-to-play gallery. And by the way, everybody, those are called vanity galleries. That's when a gallery says, you have to pay us $1,000 to have an exhibition in our gallery. Don't do that. That's absolutely a ripoff, and showing there is not going to get you any street cred. They're saying, would painting on a very large canvas increase my chances, or do galleries prefer smaller pieces? It really, really depends on the gallery. There's so many different types of galleries. A lot of the high-end galleries don't care about size. Now, if you were doing an exhibition at a local library, I don't think they would say, oh, this is too big, you can't show it, but you are limited because usually the space is not as big. So oftentimes what I have done in the past, for example, I had a show at Simmons College and I got the show before I had made the work, which, by the way, don't do it. It was very stressful. I had a year to make the work for the show. That particular gallery had really high ceilings. And I wanted to make work that was very tall because I knew it was going to fit very well. But the thing about size is your artwork should be the size that it needs to be. So people say, well, shouldn't I be making 5 foot tall canvases? And I say to them, what reason do you have for making work at that scale? And they're like, well, I just want to make it big. I'm like, well, that's not a very compelling reason. So you want to make sure that the scale of the painting, whatever it is that you choose, that it's serving what you want to do in your work. Fantastic. Blue got an AI certification on Tuesday. Puck Puck finished jewelry school assignments. Neil says, getting through another week of work. Really, a week of work can be a big slog. My week was actually okay, but I've had some weeks where I'm just like pushing through the most boring, tedious tasks, but ones that have to be done. Like I can't get out of them, which is a giant pain. Oh my gosh, 100 cookies. Can you come to my house? Alexandria says, 2 challenges. I saw friends dazzle 7 children's book covers. The other was a fairy tale page a day until done. Butter started the painting track. Fantastic. And for those of you who are in the Discord and doing the track, share the work in the track channel. There's a big party going on in there right now. It's awesome. There are all these people doing different tracks, everybody supporting each other. It's really, really fun. Like every time I open the track channel, I'm like, whoa, everybody's doing so much work. It's very energizing to go in there and see that. So obviously don't share if you're not feeling that comfortable about it, but it is so fun when everybody can see other people doing the track as well. Rachel says, in my undergrad, my professors constantly pushed us to paint on bigger size canvases. If I'm applying to a painting MFA programs, will they want to see you submitting larger pieces? I mean, I don't think that's a great thing to push people on unless it's something like you have a student who refuses to paint bigger than one size, and maybe you know that they will benefit from the experience of working at a scale that they don't have a lot of experience with. Because when I used to teach RISD freshman drawing, one of the things I used to do is I would make them do weekly homework assignments, and the drawings were 3 feet by 4 feet. Now, the reason I did that was because most students at that point, as college freshmen, had never made a drawing remotely that big. And so a lot of students told me that while that first couple weeks was very, very difficult for them, they said that after they did those big drawings, that it just made them feel a lot more capable. Now, if professors are pushing you just because whatever bigger is better, I don't think that's a great reason, but I can't make assumptions because I don't know the specifics of your situations. But if you have big paintings and they're bad, it doesn't matter. I mean, you have to have a strong, mature portfolio for an MFA. And that is something that I see sort of across the board in a lot of applications is people say, well, if I have this, will this get me in? Or somebody asked me earlier in the Discord today, they said, well, I haven't been in any gallery exhibitions. I don't have any professional experience there. Is that going to hurt me? I said, listen, that is not going to make or break your application. What does make or break your application is your artist statement. And absolutely, it's your portfolio. So I get a lot of people asking me about things they can do to hopefully increase their application, but size is not one of them. What's most important is that there is a maturity to the work, which is a whole other bigger conversation, but nothing will compensate if you don't have or demonstrate that maturity in your portfolio. We also have Puck Puck knitting a scarf while in jewelry school and making a snakeskin bag all at once. That's awesome. I love that. We also have Quiet Zone, learn the beginning of the Phil Collins song, Easy Lover. Oh my God. Who here was a child of the 80s? That's me. Gen X. Here we are. Identify yourself, Gen X, if you want to. We have Neil asking a question. Any movie recommendations to make studies from film stills? I would think about what you want to get out of that study. For example, if you say, I want to do that because I want to play with color and learn about that. For example, Nancy in the Discord has been talking to me a lot about Wicked, the movie. Who here has seen Wicked? I'm not going to go see it probably because it's not Moulin Rouge. So anyway, maybe I'll see it. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it when it's on streaming or something. I'm not going to the movie theater. I went to the movie theater for Gladiator, though. Oh. All right, tell me in the chat who saw Wicked, who saw Gladiator, and who saw both in the theaters. But getting back to the color thing, maybe that's a reason, okay? Maybe you want to get better at lighting, in which case you probably would want to choose a film that has really excellent lighting. For example, I keep telling my kid that we need to watch Aliens together because my kid really likes horror stuff. And Aliens 2. Alien is the best, but Aliens 2 is pretty good, and there's some really stark lighting. So think about that, and then perhaps maybe some people here can make some recommendations. You guys are so great helping each other out in the chat. I find oftentimes one of you has a question, and there's 3 people in the chat who are helping. So thank you all for doing that. Yeah, so Suna says, maybe it's the ADHD, but I get really into things for a while, then move on and cycle through. I call myself a collector of hobbies. I was such on a roll for those Fumage pieces. I haven't touched them. Oh my gosh, what's this been? It's got to have been about a month. Yeah, I want to get back to it, but I just, other things came up. And so I just ended up not working. I'll come back to it eventually, but I do that a lot where I just burn rubber for something and then I just drop it. That's just the way it is sometimes, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, so Starving Artist says, Manic ceramics or printmaking or photography. Never three at once. Oh, I can't do that at all. Okay, so here are the things that people get annoyed by in terms of posts. Repeat posts, soulless posting. Yes. I don't like posts where people are just whining like crazy about everything because it's just not fun to read that. I think it's different if you talk about a frustrating situation, but you follow up with, okay, how did you deal with that or what helped you? What I've learned about social media posts and just videos in general is they have to either be aspirational or educational. So people have to watch the content and feel like, oh, I learned something. Or maybe it's a piece of trivia. Maybe you didn't know this about Rembrandt. Or it can be something that maybe somebody paints a painting and you watch it and you think, oh, wow, I'd like to do that someday. So that's the thing, is if you post a post and you're not doing one of those two things, those are the types of things that people just don't engage with. Kat says, threads or tweets that are 15 tweets long annoy me. Yeah, it's a lot of work to, I know it's super lazy of me to say that. Jamil says, what annoys me is the type of post is the redundant, hyper-realistic Marvel characters. I think it's more when we feel like we're just seeing the same thing all the time. I mean, I think you could apply that to any type of work where it just feels like it's dime a dozen. You see people get into these patterns of doing things because, you know something, social media is a totally different form of content. Because you know what I realized, and tell me in the chat if you guys have had this experience where sometimes I'm following an artist and I really, really like their work. So that's why I'm following them. But then after a little while, I start to notice that every post is the exact same thing. The work is fantastic, but the social media posts don't make me want to read them because I know every single one is total cookie cutter. Now, I know some people say, oh, you need consistency in social media. I'm like, I don't have any, too bad. Like, you don't never know what I'm going to show up with. I could show up with a zombie drawing. I could show up with a picture of carrot cookies. That's one of the things that is just a part of me. I can't change that. Edie says, annoyed by foul language, gratuitous criticism. I think the most important thing about criticism is that people back up what it is they're trying to say. I think when people are just criticizing and there's nothing to be gleaned from that, that's when I get frustrated by that. Well, so this is a good point. 7A says hyperfrequency can feel, I don't know, disingenuous, but it can be down to the person and content right. I can tell you that sometimes I'm thinking to myself, oh, I should post. Don't get me wrong, I like posting most of the time. But usually the way I can talk myself into it is if I just write 2 or 3 sentences about the thing. Because when I start to see people who are just like, post, 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 and it's not very thoughtful. For example, I sent out an email today that was about the video about the Rembrandt book with all the drawings. And sure, I could have just sent out the email and said, hey, new video, Rembrandt book. But instead, I wrote, I don't know, 6 sentences. And maybe for some people, they still won't read it. That's fine. But for me, I felt better about sending that email because I knew that it wasn't just, hey, I made something. Suna says, the only thing that annoys me is people trying to sell me something in a manipulative way or not disclosing ads. Everything else is an okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, the second I know I'm being sold to, I'm out of there. I think there are ways to sneak those things in. I mean, we're kind of doing it here. But the thing is, I'm still talking to all of you. It's not like I'm saying, hey, buy our ebook, Instagram Reels cheat sheet, because that I think would be very annoying. I don't think a lot of you guys would like that if that's what the live stream was all about. Deb Lee says, annoyed by not getting to the topic until halfway through the video, but frequent videos are no problem because I'll save them to watch later. Oh, I think we've all sat through that video. Actually, you know what's my pet peeve is when they tell you at the beginning to subscribe. I'm like, I haven't even watched your video yet. You already want me to subscribe. Okay, so Moochie is asking, what's the average price of your art critique for an MFA portfolio? Well, we do not have average prices. We just have prices. So I would recommend that you go down to the video description below. You will find underneath artist services, we do have rates there for portfolio critiques that we do for MFA, independent artists, and also BFA portfolios. So you guys can see here, we have artist calls, portfolio critiques, statement editing. One of the things that I really recommend to people who are creating MFA portfolios or any portfolio basically is to get the feedback early, because what I see a lot is people will get a critique from me or an artist call, and it's really close to the deadline, like 2 weeks before. And I always feel bad that oftentimes I have to say to them, I'm sorry, but you were barking up the wrong tree. This is not the direction, because there's so much misinformation online about MFA portfolios. And a lot of the times when I help people with their portfolios, I do a critique or something like that, I have to tell them to undo a lot of things. And so the sooner you find out what to undo, how to go to the right tree, that is really, really well worth your time. Tell me in the chat, how has critique helped you early on? Because a lot of times people assume that critiques are only helpful if you're finished. Like, I can only get a critique when this painting is finished. But actually, it's the in-progress critiques that are absolutely critical, because you catch things. There's so many things that are easy to just invest hours and hours and hours on, and then to realize, oh my gosh, that was a big decision, and now fixing it is such a hassle that I don't want to do that anymore. And so that's one of the difficult things. And by the way, everybody, just so you know, today's stream is asking the questions that artists are afraid to ask. I'm going to be answering those questions. I hope all of you feel that you can do that, because I think we have to feel like the advice we're getting, it's from somebody who's invested in our best interest. I may not know all of you here by name, but I want you all to succeed. None of you here I look at and think, I really want all of you to succeed, for real. Oh, I remember the other thing I was going to ask too is misinformation. Now, we all know that is chronic everywhere with online content, but I'm wondering about art misinformation. What have you encountered online, art information, art history, whatever like that, tutorials, materials, that you later found out was wrong or not all the way correct? I'm curious about it, because I see it all the time. It drives me crazy. Like, when I watch video and people say something, I'm like, oh my God, no. Actually, somebody told me this week that they were told that artists peak in their 20s, and something about how it's mostly with testosterone that I was like, are you serious? So basically, it's all over for all of us here over the age of, I was like, could we give more toxic advice? And certainly there are people who are going to hear that and be like me and say, that's a load of crap. But I also know that there are people who may not know or have anyone they can trust who would look at that advice and really believe it, and to say, oh my gosh, I'm somebody, I don't have that much testosterone and I'm 23, I guess it's all over for me. And that's really something that frustrates me, when people get that type of information that prevents them from flourishing. Okay, so Kat says, do art galleries that charge a membership fee or require you to work there part-time count as a vanity gallery? I find this confusing. No, those are co-ops. People will use different terminology, but typically that's what it is. So a co-op is very different. A co-op is where you pay a fee every month, so you have membership. Most of the co-ops they'll do things like say, oh, okay, if you're a member, you get to have a solo show once every 2 years, or you automatically get into the members' annual show. And usually, in addition to paying the fee, you have to go to meetings. Some co ops, you have to gallery sit or do administrative work, stuff like that. And those can be a really good fit for some people. Eduardo says, as an art teacher, do you think watercolor or marker sketches could help an architect stand out professionally? I'd love to hear your perspective. Okay, Eduardo, if you could give me a little bit more information. So you're saying stand out professionally. Are you talking about in a portfolio you're making, or just you're an architect and you're trying to build, let's say, a painting practice? So if you can follow up, I just want to make sure I'm answering your question correctly. I mean, Neil, do the ArtProf tracks anytime. I think there's always value in doing things. I know Kat told me that she had this illustration she did a long time ago, and she decided to redo it because she felt that her skill set was a lot better. And it was really fun to see the comparison because there were things that were fundamentally the same, but there are also some really visible differences. So I think remaking things is really, really fun. Z says, I know my art is good enough for a good school, but I'm no good at other subjects. Have a learning disability. Would other subjects even matter? I feel I have no way to know what art school would be like. Well, let me tell you what it's like. Now, again, this depends on the school. Every school has something different. But I can tell you that when I was an undergrad at RISD, there were liberal arts requirements. You also had to take art history and stuff like that. But if you're concerned because you have a learning disability, I would recommend talking to student services. A lot of schools will oftentimes have accommodations, some more than others. And so sometimes you do have to find the right person in whatever department or staff to really help you. But don't give up on that, because I find oftentimes at schools there are so many resources that students don't even know about. And so if you inquire, like you ask one of the staff or something, oh, where can I go to get this? That's extremely important because it's not always super obvious how to do that. I think the most important thing about those other subjects, you just got to pass. Like, you don't want to fail. But honestly, the grades really don't matter that much. Unless you're going to grad school, you have to submit a transcript type of thing. Nobody cares what you got sophomore year, second semester of art history. They just want to know that you passed, you got the degree. So don't worry about it too much. Most art schools do not have a heavy emphasis on those academic classes. But again, it depends on the program, which is where it's very important to be doing that research. Mucci says, do you think grades matter in terms of getting a bachelor's in marketing when searching door a MFA in studio art? So you're asking if it's okay to have a degree in a non-art field? If you could follow up and let me know, I just want to make sure again that I'm answering it correctly. Oh man, I'm really behind on the comments. Sorry, everybody. Okay, we also have Esther, follow-up question. I have a small studio. My pastel stuff and my clay stuff live uncomfortably together in there. Should I put away the pastel stuff to make room? It depends. I mean, sometimes I just like clear house because I really feel like one of the materials is absolutely going to get in the way. But I'm also lazy when it comes to cleaning. Actually, you guys, the only reason I cleaned my studio this week, I don't know if some of you guys saw it, but it was an absolute wreck about a week ago. And I thought, oh, I just don't want to clean it. Like it got so bad that I was like, I don't even want to clean it anymore. But I was doing some videos and I have these really tiny mics that cost a fortune, but are fantastic. And I misplaced one of them. And I thought, I know it's in this room. So I just cleaned the whole room top to bottom. And it turned out I had left it on my shirt. It was in the laundry basket. So that's all you have to do. Just make a mess so big that you have no choice but to do something like that. We also have Tali's asking, is it wrong to be interested in different subjects in art instead of focusing on one? Well, if it's wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, things can be whatever you want them to be, because when people talk to me about how I create content and how we decided to structure ArtProf, honestly, the only thing I can think of is this is the only way I can see that I can teach things, because I know what my strengths are, I know what my weaknesses are, and based on that, I have built the platform in a way that I felt would really take advantage of my strengths. I also, you probably don't notice, but I've also built in things where I don't have to deal with the things I'm really bad at, or I have a fantastic staff that does it for me. And so that's the most important thing, is that you're being true to your vision. Well, here's a good point from Suna. Reposting an artwork is fine if there's a reason, but most of the time I'd rather see some process posts or random sketches than see the same pic of the same painting 15 times. Okay, who here in the chat likes behind the scenes? Because I love behind the scenes. So yes, I have a very unhealthy obsession with The Walking Dead, particularly Rick Grimes. Oh my God, I just love him. I have watched the dippiest behind the scenes footage, and I get such a rise out of it. And same thing with movies. I love watching the behind the scenes stuff. I just think it's fascinating. Whereas, I mean, the movie's great, don't get me wrong, but I could watch behind the scenes stuff just all day. It would never get tired for me. I mean, the other day I watched it behind the scenes. It was with Rick Grimes. They were filming The Walking Dead. And seriously, the whole video was him just like running next to a truck. And I was like, oh, I love this. I don't know what it's like that. Okay. Alexander says, is it possible to learn watercolor digitally, even though I've never approached it in real life? I've tried, but mostly don't know what I'm doing. And that's okay. Anything that you don't have any experience or guidance in, of course, you're not going to know what you're doing. I mean, if you want to learn watercolor, use watercolor, because nothing's going to substitute that experience. No matter how good that brush is, that is not ever going to substitute that experience. I would recommend with watercolor, we have a lot of watercolor tutorials, but maybe try something simple like a landscape, because watercolor is sort of flowy. And so it's not very good for painting really concrete specific things. For example, I think if somebody wants to like really challenge themselves with watercolor, I would say paint a portrait. Portraits are really hard in watercolor, but I think landscapes or something natural is a good way to start, because you don't look at it and say, oh my God, the eye is off. You can have a little bit more flexibility there. And we have so many watercolor tutorials. So if you just look up ArtProf watercolor in YouTube, you will find plenty. Or even better, join the Discord and we can get even more specific in how we can support you. Sonnet's asking, so a co-op is a guarantee that you'll get a solo show. For someone who wants exposure like that, would you recommend that's the way to go? For a lot of people, it's just the experience of having a solo show. Solo shows are not easy to get. So a lot of people like doing, especially if you're early in your career and you want to have that experience. That's really great. Now, it depends on the type of co-op. There are some co-ops which have very high visibility. For example, my friend Jessica Strauss, some of you may have seen my studio visit with her. She is part of the Boston Sculptors Gallery. And that's a pretty visible gallery because it's, I forget what street it is, but in Boston, it's where all the main galleries are. And so if you show in that gallery, you are going to get a lot of visibility. Now, there are other co-ops. There's another one, I can't remember. There was a local co-op, and he was in Cambridge, in Boston. And the gallery was really hidden away. Like, you had to know to go there. Whereas Boston Sculptors Gallery, they have like a whole storefront and it's on a busy street. So it depends. But again, sometimes for people, they just want the exhibition experience first before they actually go out there and try doing more of that. Yeah, good point from Esther. It depends on the co-op. Boston Sculptors happens to be a solo show once every 2 to 3 years, but there are co-ops where they don't get solo shows. Maybe they just have a member show or something like that. Good point from Deb. I know of one college that gave extra time for assignments to students with learning disabilities. There might be other assistance in completing a course in other colleges. Ask. Definitely, because these types of things, they don't get dropped in your lap. You have to make the effort to do, or ask somebody else on campus, a staff member you trust. Ask them to help you, because you can't do it by yourself. You need to ask people for help. Okay, so Eduardo is asking, I meant using design as a tool to attract more and better clients, improve the quality of my service, and so on. I mean, you can try it. I don't see any harm in trying it, but I will say that oftentimes attracting better and more clients, it's a very multi-layered thing. For example, one thing that I really, really try to do, and I don't get it right all the time, but I really try to remember people's works. So if you come into the Discord and I've seen you more than once, I really try to remember who is who. I know it feels totally impossible, but some of you guys have been in the Discord for years, and some of you I've met up with in person. And so oftentimes it's about hanging out in the right place and also knowing how to engage. For example, okay, a lot of people I know get frustrated on Instagram that they're not getting any engagement. And my question, whenever people ask me about that, is I say, well, are you commenting on other people's Instagrams? Most of the time, the answer is no. It's a give or take situation. What people really pay attention to on Instagram is comments. So how many of you guys in the chat, when you open Instagram, maybe you're looking at the number of likes or something like that, but I bet you anything you are reading every single comment. Now, we have so many comments now on our Instagram, we can't reply to them anymore. We used to, but it's gotten too big. But the thing is, I read every single comment because I look to the comments for feedback on our content to see what people are interested in. So it's as much that. And some people write really nice comments to us that are things that lift me up when I'm having a hard day and I think, oh God, why am I doing this? This is too much work. This is really difficult. And then I read one comment in the Discord or in the Instagram, people tell me how meaningful the work is to them. And I perk right up because of that. So that's a big issue, is that I don't think people realize that a lot of engagement is you have to give things. Like, it's not just you reap the rewards. And so that's the biggest mistake, is that people go on Instagram and they're just looking at it from their point of view. Because you know something, if you comment on people's Instagrams, they notice. They really do. I mean, you can't do it in a really aggressive manner. That would be very bad. Don't do something like that. But if you slowly build up, it's like, I can name names from our Instagram. You wouldn't think that I could because we have such a large following. But when I look at them and I see the comments and I say, oh, this is that person again, they're making this really great point about this. I mean, it starts to stick out. And so that's the whole thing about, just comes down to making relationships with people, being kind and supportive, and making people feel like they are not just getting dumped on. The same thing as the selling thing we were talking about earlier. The second I know somebody wants to sell me something, I'm like, I'm out of there. Or the second I know that somebody's just talking to me because they want something, like, that's the biggest turnoff, because people do that all the time in the DMs. And I'm like, goodbye. Like, people say, can you help me promote this? I'm like, no, I can't. We also have Puck, who says multi-interests often lead to new innovative ideas. Absolutely. In fact, so much of the time, I'm not getting inspiration from artists. I'm getting it somewhere else. I love looking at how people cook, especially my mother-in-law, the bread fairy. I get inspiration from looking at her stuff. So tell me in the chat, how many of you here will look to other fields to get inspiration? Because I think sometimes people have said to me, they're like, oh, you must read all books about artists. I'm like, actually, no. I like reading books about doctors and surgeons. Like, I find that stuff absolutely fascinating. And here's another good example, which is if you guys, again, are in our Discord. So Trent is one of our fantastic moderators, and our moderators are amazing. They keep that space so safe and inclusive, and we could not run the Discord without them. So anyway, Trent has a wonderful YouTube channel. You guys should check it out. It's called Technically Trent, and he does a lot of videos about affinity products and print on demand. Really wonderful channel. And he said that he had an idea that maybe someday he might have a channel for something else that was maybe like an inside peek into something. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not in that field, but I'd like to see that. Like, I'd like to see fly on the wall version of this thing. And I thought, I'm sort of the same way. Like, I'd like to just peek at what it's like to be an advertising agency art director. Like, I have no interest in actually being one, but I think some of us do like that peek into another field, even if we never will be in that field. Puck Puck says, I watch all sorts of documentaries, get ideas from my previous career for my current field, jewelry. Deb says, other topics open my mind to new ideas, new experiences, or settings. Starving Artist says, other subjects inspire my art practice all the time. Yeah, it's anything. I mean, sometimes I'm walking down the street and I'm like, oh, look at that. Some of you may have seen this post. I was eating yogurt raisins. I'm so serious. This is exactly what happened. Is I'm eating the yogurt raisins and I'm going, oh, this one kind of has a nice form. Like, even then, I'm like in professor mode, thinking about three-dimensional form and, oh, look at the volume and elasticity of the shape. It was like really, really fun to take a look at that. Reminder, everybody, we have Art Club now. This is a really fun group in the Discord. You get voice sessions, which are discussions, open studio sessions. There is no 3-to-1 critique guideline, which we have in the public channels. And also, you get critiques from me, which are now voice recordings and transcriptions. It's also a small, close-knit group of artists. So this is one of the best places to be hanging out if you want support. I think hands down, it's the biggest bang for your buck out of everything that we offer. It's a wonderful group of artists. I highly recommend you guys check it out, because you know something else, you can also do a 1-week free trial in the Discord. If you get it on our server shop, that's a great way just to test it out. Just do it for a week. If you don't like it, you can definitely cancel. We hope you don't, but you can just try it out for a week. Reminder, no Discord chat after Friday night hangouts. However, we do want you to hang out with us there because it's just so fun to nerd out with people on all these other things. Huge shout out to our top Patreon supporters. We are so grateful, especially in this time where in the US, people are very worried about funding for arts organizations. Visit artprof.org. We have lots of content on there that's not on YouTube. Use the search bar. ArtProf has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And Gumby would like for you to join our global art party. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.